Swagatam, welcome back to my computer lecture series, Learning Computer with Seeing the Beautiful Sights of Indian Village. And in the previous lecture, we talked about advantage and advantage of direct files and some property of direct files, sequential files, file organization system, and file oriented approach, database oriented approach, and file types. Now in this lecture we will learn about the sequential file system. So let us start with seeing the greenery sites of Indian village or Bharatiya village, and it is a very beautiful sites you see, and you may, I think you are enjoying seeing this greenery sites of Indian village. So let us start to talk about the sequential files. So sequential files, a sequential files store its records one after another. Sorry. We have to talk about index sequential files. In the previous lecture we have talked about the sequential files. Now let's see the index sequential files. So as we are familiar with the concept of an index, for example, a display board at the entrance lobby of a large multi-storied building containing names and room numbers of occupants is an index which helps us locate a person's room within the building. For instance, to find Dr. Jarma's room within the building, a visitor would look up his name on the display board, which is also known as index, and read the corresponding floor number and room number. This idea of scanning a logical sequence table is easier and quicker way of finding his room than searching door to door. Similarly, if a reader wishes to read the section on printers in the book, he would not begin on page 1 and read every page until he comes across this topic. Rather, the reader would search this topic in the table of contents at the beginning of the book, and which serves as an index, or in the index at the back of the book to locate the corresponding page number, and then turns directly to that page to begin reading. जय बजरंगबली, ओम नमः शिवाय, ओम नमः शिवाय, ओम नमः शिवाय। जय हनुमान जी की जय, हनुमान जी की जय। सीताराम जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम, जय बजरंगबली, जय बजरंग। ओम ऊर्जा देवाय नमः, ओम ऊर्जा देवाय नमः, ओम ऊर्जा देवाय नमः। Index sequential files use the same principle. In index sequential file organization, there are two files for every data file. First data file contains record of the file, and the second index file contains the index key and disk address of each record of the file. The data file can store the record in random sequence, but the index file stores the index keys in the stored sequence on index key value. This provides a powerful tool to users because an application can use the file for both random and sequential processing. For processing a search request for a record, the computer searches the smaller, more accessible index file first to obtain the physical location of the record and then access the corresponding record from data file. For instance, to locate an employee's record, the computer searches the index file first for this employee code key and obtain the corresponding address value. It then directly accesses the record stored at that address location in data file. Now this techniques of file management is known as index sequential access method, and files of this type are called ISAM files, abbreviated as ISAM, index sequential access method, that is abbreviated as cap ISAM, ISAM. Now let's see the advantage and disadvantage of index sequential file. The index sequential file. First, see the disadvantage of index sequential file. They require relatively expensive hardware and software resource because they need a direct access device for storage. They require more storage space than other types of files because of the need for index file. They are unsuitable for online applications requiring direct access to record. This is because direct access to record in index sequential file is slower as compared to that in direct files. So these are the limitation of index sequential file. Now we see the advantage of index sequential file. Application with low activity ratio can also index sequential files can also use index sequential files quite efficiently for direct access for processing. Applications with high activity ratio can use index sequential files quite efficiently for sequential processing. So these are the advantage and disadvantages of index sequential file. Now we will talk about the file utilities. So file utilities are routine which perform generic operation on data files. Normally they are quite general in nature in the sense that they can deal with different data formats and different types of storage medium. Some commonly used file utilities are described as given, or we like to talk the some commonly used file utilities. So in this file utility, first talk about about the uh, about the uh, sorting utility. A file sorting utility arrange record of a file in some defined sequence. A user of sorting utility specifies values of certain fields known as keys of the file's record. The key determine the sorting sequence of the file's record. The simplest case of sorting is ordering of records in a file on a single key. For example, the sequence of records of employee file is ascending order of employees code, which is the key. A more complex sorting would be ordering of records in file on two or more keys. For example, the sequence of records of employee file is by ascending order of employee code within department code. Here employee code and department code are two keys. The sorting utility first lists all records lists all records all record for the lowest department code for each employee belonging to the department in ascending sequence of employee code. Then all records for the next department code and so on. Out of these two keys in this sorting example, department code is called primary key and employee code is called secondary key. Because order of sorting is employee code within department code. A sorting utility enables user to specify their sequencing requirements for a file by means of input parameters. Input parameters such as size and number of keys and type of ordering, ascending or descending, vary from one sorting utility to another. These parameters decide the extent and sophistication of sorting utility. Now sorting utility. Sorting utility reads on sequence record of an input file and by means of various copying techniques ultimately produces an output file containing records of the input file in desired sequence. The next topic in this line is searching utility. Searching utility. A file searching utility finds a particular record in a file. A user of searching utility specifies value of certain fields known as keys of the file's record. The searching utility matches the specified key values with their values in each record to search the desired record. For example, in employee file, a user can specify value 203 for employee code field to search corresponding employee's record. Efficiency of a search algorithm. Efficiency of a search algorithm depends on file organization. For example, to search a record in a sequential file, the search algorithm scans the record of the file sequentially. Beginning with the first record, it compares the specified key field with the key field value of each record one by one. Search process terminates when the algorithm finds a record with matching key. On the other hand, direct or index sequential file organizations enable immediate access to a record with the help of either a hashing algorithm in case of direct file organization or an index file in the case of index sequential file organization. Users need to specify a file and key field value as input parameters to search utility, which searches through the file and produces the desired records. Normally, searching a record from a direct or index sequential file requires much less time than searching a record from a sequential file. So I think you are enjoying my channel ffbmd with seeing the natural sights of Bharatiya village or Indian village, gaon. It is also called in Hindi gaon, and learning computer. Now let's talk about the merging utility. Talk about the merging utility. A file merging utility combines records of two or more ordered sorted files into a single ordered file. Merging utility requires that record of each input file be stored in the same order, although their record layout need not be identical. A merging utility places record from each of the input file in their correct relative order, producing an output file having all records in the same order as input files. Next is the copying utility. Copying utility. A file copying utility produces a copy of a file. Printing utility. Copying. A file copying utility produces a copy of a file either from one unit of a storage device to another similar unit, such as from one tape reel to another, or from one storage medium to another, such as from tape to hard disk, or from hard disk to CD-ROM, or from CD-ROM to hard disk, etc. Users often use file copying utility to take backup copies of files. For example, a user may copy a file from a hard disk to tape for backup purpose. File copying utilities are also known as peripheral interchange programs, abbreviated as PIP, peripheral interchange programs, since users often use them to copy a file from one peripheral devices to another peripheral devices. Now let's see the printing utility. A printing utility prints a file to produce hard copy of its content. Printing utilities often provide the facility to print file contents in different formats. They often provide some selection and editing facilities to enable printing of parts of files, such as specified numbers, specified numbers of record and only certain fields of record. Some printing utilities provide a special format for printing files that contain program instruction rather than data. Now the next topic is in this line is maintenance utility. A file maintenance utility copies data from one or more files to a new file selectively or updates files content selectively. For example, a file maintenance utility may provide features to combine data from more than one file into a single file, delete a record from a file by specifying its key value or record count, and copy and select specific fields of record from an existing file to a new file. The next now with this I would like to in this topic here. जय बजरंगबली, जय हनुमान जी की, ओम सूर्याय नमः। जय सूर्य देवता की जय हो, एनर्जी देवता की जय हो। जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम, जय सीताराम।